Great, thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for attending today's session. So it's a session focused around the Sellafield Project and Programme Partner, and we've got some great speakers lined up. We've got Richard Maguire and Diane Richardson. That's followed then by James Rooney from Yellow Bus. But before that, I was going to give you a bit of an overview of the programme. If we could quickly just roll down there, Monica, can you see that? Hello, Monica. Oh, great, there we go. So I'm going to give a bit of a brief overview of some parish notices and some updates from the NNA. Then we're going to have Richard Maguire, who's the head of supply chain from PPP. We'll give an overview of the supply chain strategy. That will be followed by some questions then. So I'll keep an eye on the time, and depending on how long we've got, we'll try and get through as many questions as possible. Then Diane Richardson, who is the social impact lead for PPP, will give an overview of that. Again, we'll have some questions at the end of that, time permitting. And then we've got James Rooney after that, who's the IT account lead at Yellow Bus Solutions. He's going to get a bit of an update on security and communications. It is worth just noting at this stage that this is being recorded, so I just thought I'd make all attendees know. So we've got a good amount of time as well for any questions at the end as well. Also, we are going to have a speakers virtual coffee session. So Monica's got a couple of rooms set up where you can come and speak to some of the speakers afterwards if you have any further questions around that. So, can everyone hear me loud and clear? Is that okay, Monica?
It's perfect, Lauren. It's perfect. Right, I'll switch over to your slides, yes?
Thank you very much. Okay, so hopefully everyone should be able to see my slides on there now. Do raise your hands if you have an issue with that, and we can try and make sure it's resolved. Hopefully I'll be able to keep my 3 young children away while I give an update on here. Obviously, a lot of you will be in a similar scenario where we're working in offices and kitchen tables and studies, etc. So I've kept them out in the garden. Hopefully we shouldn't be distracted by them. So just as a quick overview then, so next slide please, Monica. We're going to give a bit of an update on the NNA's response to COVID-19. We're then just going to do some general updates on some of the developments we've had in forming the new steering group and subcommittees, some updates on the DIT regional fringe events that we hosted down in London back in March, an overview of the strengthening growth application that was made back end of last year and some developments around that, and then a bit of a request for some support into the nuclear sector deal winning UK business working group. So before that, we're actually going to start with a poll really, so a delegates poll here to understand kind of what your aspirations are for future events and how the NNA can further support you and your organisation through this challenging time. So Monica, hopefully this should now work. We've practiced it. So you should have the first poll question up. So how often should the NNA hold meetings during this time? If you'd please like to submit your response.
Just give it a few more seconds whilst the votes come in. Right, I've just ended that poll, so I'll share the results. Can you see the results?
Yeah, okay. So just under 55% for monthly, 45% for quarterly, and none for postpone until we can meet in person. That's good to see. So we'll take that back to the to the events committee, and we'll take those on board. Great. The next poll is what topics and presentations would you like to see in the next meeting? We've got a few ideas there, but also if there is others, you'll see click the other button via the chat function if you can put down some of the topics that you'd like to cover. So this is to get a view of what people are interested in going forward.
Right, okay, I'll share the results for this poll, and I think there's an answer via chat as well, Lauren.
Right, okay. Okay, so we've got just under 15% for COVID-related advice. Update from customers on their programs at 83%. Yeah, okay. Yeah, and the next one was one that we're developing at the moment, is looking at co-generation with the Northwest Hydrogen Cluster. That's good to see that was of interest there. And then of others, I'm just trying to see how I can get to the chat function.
Can you see it?
Wait 1 second. No, oh, here we go. So note the KTN is setting up a hydrogen special interest group, so can include to that. Great. Okay, that's great, Keith. Yep. Ray, sorry, not Keith. Next one. I can't see that. Is there any? I can only see that one. Is there any others?
No, I don't think there's any others.
Okay, great. Let's see if I can go back now. Okay, next one. So this is generally understanding how COVID-19 is affecting your business. So there's obviously the limited one. I'm imagining not going to be many, but there's a few examples there. If you can put your vote forward. You can hear the birds in the background, Monica. It's under nice setting.
Right, I'll just end this poll and share the results. There you go.
Okay. 25% limited, just under 49% for productive but less efficient. That's certainly something that I'm feeling at the moment. It seems to be taking longer to get things done, but we're making our way through. 20% significant downturn, and that's really good to see that we're 0% for likely to close down if this continues beyond spring. So obviously resilience of the membership is great to see there. Okay, and I think we've then got one final question.
We have indeed. Here we go.
And then the final question there is, what more could the NNA do to support businesses to minimise the effects of COVID-19? So this is just a bit of advice for us really in the membership team to understand how we can support you more going forward.
Right, I'll just end this poll. There you go.
Okay. 21% provide more advice type sessions. Okay, yeah. Help with accessing HMG business support measures. And then, okay, they're just under 60%. That's a clear one there. Support the NIA, NIC feedback. Yeah. great. Yeah, that's good to see there, because that's some of the areas that we're focusing on. Great. Okay, that's really good to see. We'll obviously take on board the membership feedback for that into the next steering group that we have. Really clear guidance there on where you would like support. Okay, and I'm seeing some other ideas coming through on the other, which is good to see. So we'll keep track of them. Monica, we get all the chat kept, don't we? So we can go back through that.
Yes, we'll make a note of that.
Great. Okay then, so thank you very much for participating in the poll. So just going to give you a quick kind of update on parish notices and any changes in the NNA before we get into the main focus of the session, which is obviously around PPP. So if you can just go on to the next slide for me, Monica. Next couple links, there's just a breaker slide there. Okay. So in terms of, there's been some really good work in terms of responding to the needs of the local community and the membership. You know, some great work being done by the steering team and the social impact subcommittee team, which we'll cover a bit later on. And it's also great to see that we're having collaboration with the other regions and how we respond to this. So some of the things that we've been seeing is that we've been providing guidance on managing your businesses during this time, whether that's reporting on regulation and tax, whether it's around security. So there's been quite a few advice notes going forward that you'd have seen. But a lot of the focus has really been around supporting our local areas with PPE. So we've managed to get a joint-up approach in the region for distribution of PPE from our membership organisations. So there's been a lot of good work done by Urenco, Cavendish, Atkins, Sellafield, and it's really not gone without note. You can see there some of the great examples of where our member companies are stepping up to the mark and making visors and printing them. There's also a group that have been set up for sharing hints and tips about how we can support, you know, making more of these face shields in a quicker manner. So it's great to see that the membership is really pulling together and that we can coordinate as best as possible for this during this challenging time for the local services. Okay, next slide, please, Monica. So what more can we do? Obviously, we've given some ideas there from the poll, but here's a few of the areas that we're really starting to focus on a bit more. So sharing best practice on how we're overcoming the challenges. So we've got some sessions in mind for that, of how we can share what we're doing to get around this, whether that be through IT systems, whether it be, you know, tailoring our services, etc. So we've got some ideas for that going forward. Also, there's the sharing of stories, how companies are actually adapting the way that they're working, and there's some really good news stories in that. A key one for me is linking organisations that can complement each other and support each other. And this, for me, is also helping you and your organisations around, you know, some of the application to local authorities. We've got some good links now into the Cheshire and Warrington LEP, and we've got them represented here today as well. And you can see there's the Cheshire and Warrington Growth Hub link at the bottom there. Liz de Maison is actually on today, so she may want to say a couple of words later on through the session. So you know, there's lots of great advice out there for the region, so we want to help in making sure we connect people together. Next slide, please, Monica. Okay, so what more can you do in supporting your local communities? So we've got a couple of initiatives that are currently going on about how we can best use the time of our members' personnel. We've got some great initiatives where some demonstrations and some mock science tests and mock interviews are being set up and helping CV writing, etc. So if you are interested in getting involved with this, this is being coordinated by Lisa Ingham, our social impacts subcommittee lead, and there's some great work going on in that area. So please get in contact if you would like to support that. Also, it's providing material or PPE for the local Warrington Council call. There is a call online for that, which we've distributed around, about if you have any PPE, they've given a list of what they're looking for. But also what's on the local GPs. So Monica, one of her local GPs, has been struggling. So we've been putting them in contact with some of the members, and that's for masks, that's for face visors, but also gowns, etc. So and there's also the opportunity for you to volunteer expertise such as IT skills and project management. So please do shout if you would like to get involved. Next slide, please, Monica. Just conscious of time, it took a bit longer on the poll than I was imagining, so I'll rattle through these. So we've now revised the steering group in the last kind of 8 months since we relaunched the NNA. We've now got a real coherent steering team set up, and you can see the organisations that are represented there. So the team are now starting to get together more frequently, and some roles and responsibilities are becoming really clear. We've also set up some subcommittees now, as you'll see there. So as I mentioned earlier, social impact is being led by Lisa Ingham. Bernard Cunningham is looking after our clean growth interest. And then Steve Daly is looking at the SME development and how we can support that. So these new subcommittees have been launched. They're now working through their terms of reference, what projects they're looking for, and also, their subcommittee teams essentially. So again, please get in contact with myself or any of those three if you would be interested in joining them. Okay, next slide, please, Monica. It's kind of got lost with COVID-19, but there was a really good event down in London back in March that we set up with some of the other regional clusters and member organisations, which was a fringe event to the main Civil Nuclear Showcase, which focused on the strength in place, so the value that each of those regions brings, highlighting the major programs that are going on in that area, what opportunity there was for exporting capabilities, but also inward investment. So this was obviously a major international delegation. Clearly, some of the the international overseas attendees was restricted because of COVID-19, but there was still a very good turnout from that, and we had good participation in our fringe event. I think what's good about this is it set the tone now of how we can use this for other international events such as the WNE in Paris or the Waste Management Symposium in Phoenix. So we're working with DIT to see how we can best utilise the effort that's gone into organising this and making this happen. So a lot of good work then put in by the likes of BEC, Wales Nuclear Forum, Southwest Nuclear, and many others. So great event there. Next slide, please, Monica. Just touching on this, no real updates. Essentially, at the last session, I gave a bit of an overview of what the application was around. So it's an industry-led approach to stimulating and inspiring innovation to develop and commercialise nuclear energy. So it's a list of partner organisations is on the next slide, but it's covering industry, academia and government. The application was submitted back in October 2019. We were meant to get the phase 1 announcement in March, however that's been delayed because of COVID, but we should hopefully be finding out relatively shortly on that. So if you look back through, there's in the last session there's a few slides on that. However, if you want any more information and if you would like to get involved, then please contact myself. You can see on the next slide, Monica, I'm clicking on my screen, but it's not making it move. Next slide down, Monica. There's a bit of an overview. You can see the organisations that are involved. So it's being led by the NNA, but we've got support from the National Nuclear Laboratory, Cavendish, Atkins, NSAN, Warrington Borough Council, Manchester University, and the Manchester Science and Industry Museum. So a great opportunity there for the region. And then the final slide is then just a bit of a request on the nuclear sector deal winning UK business. I head up the working group 2, which is about mapping the UK's capabilities and products. Sorry, it's the slide before, Monica. Which we've now got over 200 inputs from various organisations, And what this is being compiled for is to actually update what credible capability and capacity we've got for export campaigns that are being led under Work Package 1 in that sector working group, essentially. But if your organisation isn't represented on there, please get in contact with myself. There's a very brief template to complete, as you'll see, but beneath there, there's just a screenshot of it. It shouldn't take too long to complete, and it's a great opportunity to make sure your organisation is represented in there. So that, I think, is it for now. As you can see on the next slide, there are my contact details. If you'd like to know anything about any of the parts covered there, or getting involved with any of those initiatives mentioned, then please do get in contact. So apologies, it took a little bit longer than hoped, but we should now have Richard Maguire who's the head of supply chain for PPP. Richard, are you there?
I am indeed, yeah.
Great.
Hello, everybody.
Hand over to you then.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to have a slightly clunky moment. Just bear with me whilst I share my screen with you. Hopefully that's now come up, and hopefully we are on full view. I hope so. So first of all, a quick one then, just in terms of myself and where we're up to. We were just a little bit concerned that perhaps on PPP we'd been a little bit too quiet for too long, and so we just wanted to take this opportunity really just to be able to walk you through where we're up to, and also sort of give you a face and a point of contact effectively for PPP opportunities.
Sorry, Richard, do you want to put it into presentation mode just to make it a little bit bigger? I don't know if everyone can see it clearly.
I thought I was. It suddenly disappeared. Is that better?
Oh, there we go. That's perfect. Great.
Great. Okay. Apologies for that. So, so yeah, basically a quick introduction. For my sins, I head up the supply chain on PPP. You can see my points of contact here, and very specifically my email address and my mobile number. One of the big things about this is about giving you visibility and about a point of contact. So please genuinely do use it. We are available and we are contactable. Hopefully we'll share the presentation that we go through, and we'll post it on NNA's website or other facilities as well. And again, a quick thank you as well to Lauren and the NNA for giving us this opportunity about sharing some of the work that's about to happen or is going on within PPP. So let's give you a little bit of background and a little bit of detail. For those who don't know, PPP is made up of 5 constituent partners, as they are. I'll give you a quick overview in terms of what those partners are doing. So lot 2 is Jacobs, and they're undertaking all of the design and engineering works across all of the projects themselves. Lots 3 and lots 4 are effectively the construction partners, and we've got Morgan Sindall and Doosan under those. And in terms of the split of work between Morgan Sindall and Doosan, it's fairly self-explanatory insofar as Morgan Sindall are sort of gravitating towards the civil engineering type biased projects, and Doosan are leaning more towards the process side of the business. I've left out lot 1 up until this point because it's worth explaining what KBR, my company, is doing. We're the integration partner. And effectively what we mean by that is we're looking at taking that slightly macro view of things rather than looking on projects on an individual project to project basis. And by doing that, the plan, of course, is that we take a consolidated view and hopefully identify some efficiencies across the piece. If you think of them as the glue gluing all of the various projects together, you're not far off. And the 5th partner, of course, is Sellafield Limited, who have the ability to drop resources and specific experience within the delivery teams. And effectively, we've got delivery teams set up for each project. So that's a good segue then in terms of the projects and what PPP comprises. And effectively, we've got some projects that are happening right here and now, and some projects that are in the future. So the projects that are in the here and now, we call those, and again, forgive the terminology, I always feel like we should walk around with like some kind of mini acronym dictionary glued to our sides. But so we call those projects in flight. Fairly self-explanatory for that one. I'll come on to those in a little bit more detail, but as you can see here, we've effectively got 5 current live projects running. And then the future projects, which are happening over the course of the next 20 years, comprise 15 identified projects that we're currently delivering. Now, when you put that into context, it's quite an interesting scenario because, again, most businesses, COVID-19 exceptions, of course, but most businesses have a 1 or a 3-year business plan. Maybe they have a 5-year business plan if they're lucky. But effectively, we're trying to put together effectively a 20-year business plan, which is very, very unusual. So what are we doing right now, and what projects have we got on board that we're currently delivering? So we've got 3 projects that you can physically see here. Excuse me. Last November, we were effectively handed the keys to these 3 projects to say, right, deliver them under the PPP umbrella. And effectively, these projects are physically or just about to physically start on the site. So I'll run them through. So running right to left, actually. So SRP, prior to the lockdown, we were physically pouring concrete on site and getting the ground floor slabs in place. And so things were developing there. On the left-hand side, you've got the SCP. And again, the groundworks and some of the physical works had started on the site there. And in the middle, you've got RAP. RAP is just going through the major project total price process at the moment. So it's out of design and just before construction. You'll have noticed, the sharp-eyed amongst you will have noticed that on the first slide, there were 5 projects, and on this slide, there's only 3. The other 2 projects, which are BEPS 2 and LSS, are still in design phase at the moment. So we're still working up the design and we'll go to construction shortly. And so obviously at the moment we have the construction pause that's happening right here and now as we speak today. We are in place or putting in place plans to remobilize the site. In fact, last week we actually went to site to start understanding within the social distancing and keeping our workers safe how we can remobilize the physical construction works on the site. And we're in process of doing that. The plan is that immediately after the lockdown, as soon as it is reasonable and of course safe to do so, that we'll remobilize the construction activities. And so we're kind of conscious from a construction perspective that every other construction site across the UK and indeed the world will be doing something similar. So we're taking a reasoned view on the remobilization to make sure that we're just we have all the materials, all the resources there to make a proper restart when it comes through. So what are we trying to achieve? So what you see up in front of you is a very generic list of goals. And I apologize for those because literally any supply chain professional would immediately come up with those. So I'm not going to spend too much time on these. So that's what we should achieve. But what do we really actually want? And this is the more important piece. So the thing with PPP is that we're trying to make, we're trying to do things in a different way in order to make us all of the projects more efficient and to be a more collaborative approach to doing these things. And that has a number of facets that obviously we're going to require the supply chain to come along as part of that journey. So once you start removing the jargon, let's have a look at it. So in terms of readiness, this is really crucial to us. From a supply chain perspective, we need you guys to be ready when those tenders hit. No surprises, no last minute requests, no last minute tenders is our ultimate goal. And as part of that, we need to make you as the supply chain aware of those tenders, aware of the schedule, the program of when those tenders are going to come out, so that you can start to think about how to structure your own resources to react to those tenders effectively. Collaboration, of course, everybody talks about collaboration these days, but if you think about it, it's actually trying to get a more efficient way of doing things and seeking the best advice from the market to be able to put those in place. And I'm talking about, I'm not talking about warm hugs in the morning. I'm talking about involving the contractors at a much earlier stage than you might normally, to get some input around constructability, about methodology of construction, schedules, and so forth. So with all of these things, it's a reciprocal arrangement. We're looking to get something out of it as well, of course. On the collaboration side as well, true collaboration is also incentivized. So we need to make sure that there is not just a promise of work and a promise of work at a fair price, but also some degree of incentivization there to make sure that we're getting the best of the best. Visibility, again, I touched on it earlier. This is why we're having this meeting today, and I make no apologies, or I kind of do. If you've seen this content before, I apologize, but I'm really keen to get all of our opportunities out to the market as fast as possible, and to make sure the market is as aware as we can be of all of the packages that are coming up. Part of that, of course, is me talking until I'm blue in the face about these opportunities, and eventually you getting sick of me talking about these opportunities. But if you know the tenders that are coming out, you know the magnitude of it, then I think I'll have done my job. So visibility of the opportunities, but also visibility of the team delivering those opportunities. So, hello. That's why, again, you've got my points of contact. It's not just me, obviously, delivering the tendering, but I can act as a conduit to the rest of the team as well. And the last bit is crucial. So support. We need you. We need you at your absolute best. You'll see in a couple of slides' time the scale of what the projects are about and some of the requirements that are there to deliver these projects. So we can't achieve it if we're doing business as usual. We have to bring innovative approach, design input, best practice, modular construction, all of those things. We need to bring them and deliver them on PPP because of the scale of the opportunity that's there. So where are we at the moment? Starting left to right, we identified the portfolio of works, which I'll share in just a second. We're currently building this portal on which to tender, and then the next bit, again, that's why I'm here today, communicate those opportunities and start engaging with the market so that you're all aware of them. And so this is the mountain that collectively we must climb. And this translates to the sort of nearly circa £6.8 billion worth of work that I showed you earlier. Unfortunately for all of us, it's not spent in a linear way. So you can see here that the period from like 2025 through to the end of 2029, it's a very large peak. And so from a supply chain perspective, it goes to what I said earlier. We need to be preparing ourselves to have the resources, to have the supply chain, to have the right people in place to deliver that peak. And this is always a really interesting one for me as well, because it's not just about tenders and spend and things like that. It's also ultimately about people. So you can see here that they're in the same period as the construction, obviously. We have a huge peak in terms of the number of people that we're going to be required to deliver this. And this, when you start to think about it laterally, this is kind of an interesting one, particularly because, well, you can see there that the peak is it's actually about 2,700 during 2026 and 2027. But you start to think about other things. So how do we get all of these people in and out of site every day? How do the logistics work? What does it mean for the local infrastructure and the local economy, both to West Cumbria and also to the Warrington area? What impact does all of these people coming into that area have? And again, where are we going to get those people from, of course? So again, from a recruitment perspective, from a resource perspective, we need to gear up for that. But it's not just about that. So when you start to think about all of those people, you know, where are those resources? Where are those labourers going to stay? What accommodation have they got? What current infrastructure is there to support them in West Cumbria and in Warrington? When they get to site, where are they going to be based? Which office will they be sitting in, or where will they take their lunch? That's a lot of people every day to actually get in and out of the site. And who's going to provide that lunch? We talked about PPE. Who's going to provide all of that PPE for these people? So it's not just a pure construction story. There's all sorts of other areas that we need to think about when we're talking about delivering PPP. And you'll of course notice as well, it's not just blue collar staff, but it's also white collar staff as well. So we need to think about recruitment and resourcing there. And so we kind of moved to the, I suppose, the meat and bones of it. We've looked at that spend at that peak and identified it across each of the projects to come up with the combined list of some of the facilities, some of the services that we need to provide. And as I mentioned earlier, the plan is not to award things on a project-to-project basis, but the plan is to take a more strategic view and have a look at awarding things on longer-term arrangements across multiple frameworks that take you on a longer-term spend. And the numbers are quite staggering, I suppose. The numbers are very large. So you can see on here, mechanical process equipment is 21% of the overall spend at £941 million. So from our side, what looks good around supply chain is trying to deliver those across long-term frameworks. And we're putting ourselves, and again, I apologize for this, we're putting ourselves at the various plans to deliver these frameworks in the next 12 to 18 months to deliver the majority of the scope of works to take us for the next 20 years. Some of those frameworks will be tailored, as you'd expect, but effectively what we're talking about here is long-term, term-based frameworks. It might be 3 years, it might be 5 years, it might be 20 years to deliver the scope of works that we have here. Obviously, the schedule that we have, we're impacted a little bit at the moment with everything that COVID-19 is doing us, but the scope of work is still the same. You know, we've still got to deliver this stuff, and it's likely that we'll deliver it maybe a month or a couple of months later, but this is kind of where we are in terms of our prioritization. So that's a lot of frameworks that we had there, and we're interested in the next level of detail down. So what you'll see in the upcoming slides is effectively some of those bigger packages and how we've broken it down and what we anticipate. So the first up is mechanical process equipment. It's the biggest one. That translates to a peak of £101 million per year on mechanical process equipment. And we are looking to go to the market in November, December of this year, and likely to tender it in the start of next year. Because of the nature of it, mechanical process equipment covers a very broad church. It's likely that we'll package it down into some sub-packages from there. But again, it gives you an idea in terms of the actual spend, when that's going to happen and how that's likely to translate itself. Next up is design services. We will need a whole heap of design services. Maybe that's augmentation of Jacobs. Maybe it's delivering other design services, but we need professional services there. Concrete structures, again, a significant spend of nearly £800 million over the next 20 years. And it's not just about placing the framework for the concrete frame installers, the concrete frame contractors. It's also about all of the material suppliers that go along with that. So much in the same way that we talked about where are those white collar staff going to sit and eat, we also need to think about all of the materials on how we get those the concrete structures delivered. So in terms of formwork, rebar, concrete supply, all of those good things as well. So again, we've actually started the market engagement on that. The plan is that as soon as lockdown is completed, we'll be issuing the formal pre-qualification process and getting mobilized there. This is one of the first tenders that will be awarded, and we're looking to award it in October 2020. The reason being is that effectively we need to get that early contractor involvement, and it'll be true of the next slide as well. We want to get those frameworks in place, not just delivering construction, but also delivering expertise. So pulling some of the staff from those framework providers to give us that buildability and the constructability advice. So steelwork, total value 132 million. Over the course of last week, we were actually starting to mobilize on this one in terms of the market engagement piece. Tendering June, July. In fact, I had a call this morning with guys on the SCP to say, is it worth us tendering that in the next week? So we might actually accelerate this package, but the plan would be to award it ASAP because we've got spend coming through right now. Electrical, again, significant value, 419 million. Again, likely to be multiple packages, but just because of the nature of the electrical works. Commissioning services, again, interestingly, the peak is, as you'd expect, the peak is a little bit later. And again, a significant volume of work when you look at the 334 million pounds that we'll spend on commissioning services. Hopefully that's given you a quick insight in terms of the key packages, but hopefully it gives you a bit of an idea in terms of how we would intend to go about what's our strategy basically on acquisition of those services. What you see here is effectively a list of the current packages. And obviously that's a sort of floating feast. We're likely to tweak that as it goes through. And there's likely to be some offshoots within that as well. So again, as I mentioned, concrete, we'll place the concrete framework, but we'll also need to think about how we deliver the various other things as well. So how do we register? How do you get involved? This is the crucial piece here. So right now, we're working on a centralized procurement system. That will give us the facility to create a vendor database. It will give us the facility to launch all of those opportunities and also do all of the tendering. Hands up though, we're not quite there yet. I think we're likely to have it up and running around about September, October of this year. These things take a lot of building, unfortunately. In the interim, and it's a bit old school, please forgive me, we're maintaining a mail shot list effectively. So what I would ask you to do as a sort of call to action following this meeting, if you haven't done so already, pop us a quick email, just introduce yourselves as businesses, give us a quick oversight in terms of what we do, and then we'll drop you onto the mail shot, but we'll also connect you to the right people in the business. As I say, treat that email address as a conduit. That email address as well, we're trying to respond to it fairly quickly. Within 48 hours of any emails coming through, we like to respond. And again, you've got my contact details as well, so please do get in touch. It's, as I said, a little bit old school until we get the proper system up and running, but at least that way we're sending out information about tenders, we're sending about opportunities within that mail shot, and so you're not missing anything in the interim. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea. Hopefully we've ticked probably 4 boxes for you. So hopefully you know the workload and the projects for the next 20 years. Hopefully you know how we plan to package up the frameworks, taking that programmatic view of the works. Hopefully you know how to register with us through that PPP email address. And most importantly, you know, we're here. You've got a point of contact within PPP. If you have queries, if you have questions about supply chain related things, just drop us a line. We're human beings at the end of the day. I'll go back to the collaboration piece. It is a two-way street. We're happy to give that support as far as we can. I will stop the screen share, and then I'll open it up for a couple of minutes of questions and answers. And I think with the, as Monica mentioned earlier, we'll go to like the separate breakout room shortly.
Yeah, so we've got 5 minutes set aside now for Q&A. In terms of a bit of process for this, just to make it as easy as possible, if you can raise your hand with the raise a hand button, Monica then will be able to unmute you so that you can raise your question for Richard. But also, you please feel free to use the chat function as well. So, is there any questions to start with, or shall I kick us off with one? Have we got anyone coming through, Monica, from what you can see?
Liz de Mason wishes to ask a question. So, Liz, I'm just going to unmute you now.
Hey, Liz.
Hi, Richard. Hi. I was just really interested in your comment around the supply chain approach and collaboration and incentivizing collaboration. I was just wondering, is that about ensuring more collaboration between SMEs and larger businesses and universities and the KTNs, etc.? I was just trying to understand what you meant by that a bit more.
So the collaboration piece is around how we engage, and you're right. So and I think Diane will cover some of this in some of her presentations around the social value piece as well. But yeah, that collaboration can come from a variety of sources, whether it's directly from the supply chain or sub-supply chain, whether it's from local entities and so forth. So we are looking at all areas that we can collaborate with, specifically in terms of the incentivization, and I'll talk from a supply chain perspective. So we are looking at commercial incentives to be able to attach to some of these frameworks in our contracts. Common sense, and there's nothing unusual about it. We are keen to make sure that the supply chain is incentivized to deliver the highest possible performance. And that inevitably then leads to a commercial discussion about what does that actually mean in terms of incentives. So we're operating under NEC 3 forms of contract, and we're writing into the contracts on the key contracts some incentivization mechanisms. So that might be around finishing the project early, or it might be around finishing the project below cost. And sharing some of those benefits. It's not just about all of the benefits coming directly to the main contractors or ourselves. It's about making sure that, you know, if we have a benefit, then it's fair to pass that on to you guys as well. Just and again, just in terms of SMEs specifically, it's worth mentioning on that actually, because we are very keen to encourage SMEs. So within our overall PPP procurement acquisition plan, our strategy, we've outlined certain measures to give SMEs certain preferential treatments, I suppose is the right way of saying it. So basically, when we're looking at trying to support the SME market, giving them a bit of a step to say, well, okay, if you're within a percentage of a non-SME, then we award it to an SME. If you're a local environment, a locally based SME, then we look at supporting you.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you very much. Okay, take another couple of questions. So any more up there? Any hands been raised? Okay, I'll quickly ask one just in the meantime then. Richard, obviously, when you showed the scale of the challenge ahead in terms of numbers of personnel onto site, can you hear me? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know if I muted myself there. Obviously, that challenge is very, you know, in terms of scale, very similar to HPC. I think you said it was just under 3,000, wasn't it? At one point, at its peak, I think it was on your graph there of number of people on the site.
Yeah.
So, obviously, the whole kind of challenge of getting onto the site, the local infrastructure, you know, welfare and accommodation. What's being done in terms of the LFE from EDF, NMB and its tier 1, such as bylaw and the MEH Alliance? Because clearly there's some huge challenges going on down in Somerset. Is there learning to take on board from that for you guys?
Yeah, it's twofold effectively. So absolutely, we're running LFE sessions, and it's a whole series of workshops that are happening there, both within the Sellafield environment and externally as well, to try to get some of that. And then as well, we're also looking at site-wide improvements. So there's been a specific team set up to deal with site-wide improvements across not just within the actual footprint of Sellafield, but also the local infrastructure as well, to deal with exactly those kind of things about how you get all of those people to site every day in a very efficient way. Logistically, it's a very interesting challenge, and I say that not just within West Cumbria, but also within Warrington as well, because obviously those resources are there in Warrington too. So it's when I say site-wide improvements, we're looking at both physical locations, if you like.
Mm-hmm. I suppose there's been a lot of work undertaken for a number of years now by the Southwest Nuclear LEP and Cluster. I think that's something that we could probably take on board. I don't know, John Granger's on the call as well. Maybe we could look at kind of under the Northwest Nuclear Arc of how we could give that level of response that the Southwest has done as well.
Yeah, again, one of the critical things for me, and that's why I make no apologies for delivering the message, as many times as I can get away with. I'm very keen for people to understand the extent and the magnitude of the projects that we've got coming up, just so that we can get some, again, collaboration around how we collectively deliver those, because it's such a large portfolio of work over a relatively compressed period of time that you have to do things differently. You have to look at more innovative ways of approaching it, which is why, and again, we're not as arrogant as to assume that we have all the answers. We're very keen to understand how have other people done it in a good way and in a bad way, so that we can take that forward.
Great. Okay. Is there any more questions coming through?
No, I can't see anything. No.
We're just a minute short, but if anyone's got any, you're very quiet today, guys. You sure no questions while we've got Richard here? Great opportunity.
Again, guys, feel free to connect with me afterwards. Connect through PPP supply chain, the email address that I gave you. Feel free to reach out.
Great. Thank you very much for that, Richard. Great. Okay. So moving on from that, we're going to have Diane Richardson, who's the social impact lead for PPP partners. She's going to give an overview of their strategy and how that's working going forward. And we should have some time for some questions at the end of that. So Diane, over to you.
Thanks, Lauren. I'll just share my my screen there. So my name's Diane Richardson. I obviously work alongside Richard. Just checking, can you hear me all right? Just give me a nod. Everybody hear me? Yeah, fantastic. I always worry just in case you can't be heard and you're chattering away to yourself. So I'm part of the PPP social impact team. You'll see more of us later on. But a bit like Richard, this is about us coming and starting a conversation with you. So, and you are my very first online presentation on Zoom, so it's very exciting for me today. So why do we want to come and talk to you about social value, social impact? Why does it matter, essentially? So I think a lot of you will know that social value is a legal requirement for public procurement. Within the PPP bid, when we all bid for it, it was set as 10% within the tender, and to be upfront about it, we will be flowing that down to you within the PPP contract. It will be contractualised, so we wanted to kind of set your expectation on this. We want you to think of it a bit like health and safety or quality. So you've got a team there that are there to guide you, to support you, who really know their stuff, but delivery of social impact is down to all of us. It really is a full team effort. So we'll do exactly the same with social impact as we do with quality and health and safety. So it will be there within the contracts. Whatever you say you will do, we will turn into KPIs, we'll measure them, and we're going to be upfront here. If the social value, when it comes to the end of what you deliver, so if you're pouring concrete on site, for example, you pour the concrete, but then we look and you haven't delivered on the social impact that you said you would, that will not be signed off. So we'll just be straight up about that upfront. All right, so Richard showed you this as well, and it's huge, isn't it? It's really big, and you can see where the major part of the social impact is going to be delivered as well, because we're all going to be involved there right in the middle. And we want you to be ready for this. We want you to be ready to help us deliver that social impact on PPP. But what do we really mean by social impact? Now, I'm aware some of you may be watching this on small screens. You might not be able to see this. You will have the slides shared afterwards, and a lot of my slides are about you being able to look afterwards and examine them, not necessarily about what you see today on the screen. But this is really telling you about the difference between CSR, corporate social responsibility, and social impact. So let's be up to date about this. If we said that economic deprivation was like COVID-19, CSR is like giving somebody paracetamol. Makes them feel a bit better, doesn't have a great long-term effect. Social impact is developing the vaccine. So that's what we really want to do. We've got 20 years on this contract. We've got a chance to make a real difference to the local communities that we work in. So we're not saying don't do CSR. Absolutely, you should. Charitable donations, helping with teams for football teams, you know, encouraging the youth to get out and be active, all that kind of stuff. Brilliant stuff to do, great stuff to do. The charities are desperate for funding at the moment. They've lost their chances to be fundraising. They need that money coming through. But what we are saying to you is that is not social impact. That will not gain you points within the contract. So if you put on that you're sponsoring a local football team or you've given thousands to charity, absolutely brilliant, won't gain you points when it comes to social impact because it is not social impact. So hopefully that'll help you when you come to do bits with us. All right, so we did want to point out we are part of Sellafield. We're not something separate, we're part of Sellafield. So we align completely with their social impact strategy. If you haven't read this, it is online, and in one of my slides later, I share some helpful links, and that is one of them. It's easy to read, it'll start you thinking off, it'll show you where our focuses are, so I would take the time to do that. The graphic on the right is from the Oxford report, which Sellafield had done, and that talks about the economics of Warrington and West Cumbria, and it shows the impact that Sellafield has within Copeland and within West Cumbria. So Sellafield's social impact strategy at the moment concentrates on West Cumbria only. And the reasons for that are within the Oxford report, if you read it. There's a saying around here that if Sellafield sneezes, everybody catches a cold. But really the impact that Sellafield has here is much bigger. Warrington has a more diverse business base. It doesn't react quite as much to Sellafield activity. So that's taken into account within the social impact strategy. And then there is the basic fact that the big site is based in West Cumbria as well. So there are differences as well between Warrington and West Cumbria, and this is not saying in any way, shape or form that Warrington should not be helped and supported as well as part of us being there. It will just be in a slightly different way. So if you looked at West Cumbria, if you picked up on some things from around here, if you talk to the Warrington Job Centre, for example, they get a steady churn of unemployed people. So they'll tend to come on for a few months, get another job, go back off, come on for a few months. In Whitehaven, if you talk to the Whitehaven Job Centre, people tend to get more stuck. They have a core of people that never get off onto jobs. So it's a different problem that we need to be having a look at. There was a report recently as well that said that Copeland has less businesses setting up and more businesses closing down than the national average, which is obviously something of an issue. So the links that I've given you will give you a lot of information around this. They can help you see what the problems are that we're trying to do something about. Okay, so the next few slides, I'm not going to go through in depth. These are some that you can look at. So what we're doing at the moment is we're developing some of the things that will act as guidance for you. So we've developed this. This was for a big tender. So this will be for something where we'd expect to get a decent amount of social impact out of it. We know that these need to be different according to the tender. That doesn't necessarily mean that if a tender is of a smaller financial value, it will be of a smaller social impact value, because the two do not necessarily correlate. So that's something that's quite important to remember. But take the time to have a look at these separately afterwards, because I'm not going to go through them in any depth. Just to mention within this one, it does mention PPP Time Bank. That's something that's in development at the moment. It will essentially be a shared way of all of us and all of our supply chain being able to put time, resource or money into one place so that we know exactly what we've got to work with. So that's in development at the moment. So as I say, I'll flick through these ones. I'm not going to go into any great depth about them. You can have a look at them later. There's the useful links for you. So Sellafield Social Impact Strategy, the Oxford Economics report that I mentioned, and then Cumbria Community Foundation's report on West Cumbria as well. If you read those three, you will know what the issues are that we're wanting to look at. And ultimately, businesses are problem solvers. So we need your help to solve these problems. What we would say is you don't have to climb the mountain alone. There's a whole team here to help you. So this is the team that I'm part of. I'm incredibly proud to be part of this team. Very diverse in terms of our background, our experience, the ways that we interact around social value. So I'm really, really proud to be part of them. So next steps for us, we will be launching our plan soon, and if you're registered on the PPP supply chain email, you will get the plan shared with you when it's ready. As I say, we're trying to give you some time to have a look at all those documents, get yourself genned up beforehand. There was something else that I wanted to cover here, and you know, I'm told sometimes, I'm given some feedback sometimes that social impact is, well, it's not really very business-like, is it? It's all a bit emotional, soft and fluffy, you know. I think one of the things COVID-19 has really proved to us is how important social value and social impact are. But for me, we should be emotional about these things. We should be emotional at our parents going home, choosing whether they put the heating on in winter or feed themselves alongside their children that night, because that's happening on our shift. It's happening in our communities. We should be emotional about the fact that we have youngsters born today in 2020 who won't reach their full potential, not because they haven't got the capability or the intelligence or they don't have the work ethic, but because of where they're born. I mean, 2020 on our shift, that shouldn't be happening, and we should be emotional about it. We should be emotional about the fact that we haven't got as many entrepreneurs setting up businesses and helping to drive through our local economy. So I'm not going to make any excuses for the fact that I will be emotional about social impact, and I hope you will be as well. Because I'd like in 20 years for all of us to be able to stand up and say, you know what, look what happened on our shift, that did, and say it with pride. So that's the contact details. I've given you 2 emails. Now at the moment I am working from home, as we all are. So I'm using the KBR email because I have easier access to it. I've also put my mobile on there. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Very happy to interact, very happy to answer questions. I love talking about social impact. So I would love to have that conversation with you if there's something that you want to know. And just because I think every PowerPoint should have a cute dog on it, I thought I'd use this one. So any questions, I'm more than happy to answer. And that's me.
Great, thank you very much for that, Diane. So yeah, same drill as before. So if you want to raise your hand, so Monica can unmute you. Thanks very much for that, Diane. There, have we got any questions coming in?
I'm just scrolling through to have a look. I can't see any questions at the moment, Lauren.
Anyone that wants to raise a question, just press the chat button. If you click on the bottom there's a raise a hand button. Please raise it now.
We've got Liz de Mason would like to ask a question. Liz, I'll unmute you.
Hi, sorry to be asking the questions. It's a question really that also links into Richard's presentation, but I was really interested in your slide about creating resilient economies. And I was wondering whether, because of the impact of COVID and the disruption in overseas supply chains, where this could be an opportunity to build even more resilience in the UK and in our nuclear related communities, to encourage businesses that aren't already supplying the nuclear industry to diversify into this industry. And you know, it's a golden opportunity in a sense, because you know, we do need that resilience in the UK. And you know, I think COVID has really highlighted how what a sort of difficult position the UK is in, because we don't manufacture as much as we used to, and we should be building more resilience into our manufacturing supply chains. So it's just a question, it's a comment, but also just your views, whether that will impact the you know, your views on creating more resilience in these local economies.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? Oh, felt like I was echoing quite a bit there. It's a really interesting question. I think COVID-19 has really, it's got us all to take a minute, hasn't it? And really think about what we're doing. What it's definitely done is emphasise that all the things that we talk about in social impact, the sustainable incomes, the resilient economies, the thriving communities, just how vital they really are, not just in terms of us contributing to them, but actually how much we need them as businesses as well. If we got those right, it's good for us as well as it's good for our local communities. So yeah, those, obviously everybody's having those conversations, aren't they? I can't give you a definitive answer to the question other than from a personal point of view. I absolutely agree, it's something that we need to be looking at. Social impact and resilient economies, it's good for us. So why wouldn't we?
Okay, thanks for that. Is there any more questions coming up?
Yes, there is. We've got a question from Callum Thomas, so I'm just going to unmute Callum.
Go ahead.
Hi, thanks Monica. Thanks Diane, that was great. You touched on a point about how there's lots of existing initiatives going on, and when we're looking at social impact, we're always conscious trying to not duplicate or start something new that's already being done. Can you just talk to us just a bit more about how PPP will join the dots and steer us towards the initiatives that are happening in a kind of coordinated way, please?
That's an absolutely brilliant question, Callum. Thank you. I'm so pleased you asked that one. Yeah, part of the whole social impact strategy will be around how we coordinate this in a really good way. So up until now, I think what we've all done is kind of, we've all thrown a lot of paint at a wall, which is fantastic because the paint, some of the paint sticks, and that's brilliant. But actually, if you get a team of organised painters in and you coordinate them to paint the wall, you get a better output, don't you, ultimately? So we will be doing that. We will be looking at that, and that will be done through the tendering. So we are still working a lot of stuff out. We are not coming on here saying we are perfect. We need your help to do this really, really well. But we will be looking at how we have a system that says, right, we've got a contracting tender coming up there. What do we need them to do that will make a real difference? Where's the gap? And I think that's a big part of where what we call PPP services will come in terms of, we're not going project to project, we're able to look at it across a whole programme. So that will be very important for us. And just to get you all thinking, one of the questions that we're discussing quite a bit now, we mentioned resilient economies there, but one of the things we've really seen through COVID-19 is volunteering. So if you look at the Good Sam, you look at the local volunteering groups, you look at informal volunteering that people are doing, looking after friends and neighbours and all the rest of it. How do we get that to carry on? Because we know our charities were struggling for lack of volunteers, particularly things like board members and things like that. How do we get all those people that have stepped up now in an emergency, when COVID-19 goes away and we've got a vaccine, to think, oh, well, I've rather enjoyed that. I can carry on doing this. I can make time to volunteer. What should I do? How do we do that? And then how do we coordinate it if we keep that momentum up as well?
Great, thanks for that, Diane. I think you're right. I think there's certainly going to be a no going back to usual, essentially, is going to come forward. I think that'll be one of the major areas of that value that people can bring, and that, you know, it's a two-way street, isn't it, really? If you feel like you're helping, it can be very, very rewarding. So Great. Okay.
It is,
Thank
and
you for-
great career development as well, just to mention, being a board member or something like that.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, thank you very much for that, Diane. That's bang on time. Great. So if I can now pass over to James Rooney. James is the IT account manager for Yellow Bus Solutions. And James is going to be giving us a bit of an overview of online security and comms. James, are you there?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. You're okay. Hi everyone, can everyone hear me? And I'll just share my screen. 1 second. Can everyone see that now?
I'm glad the IT company could do the IT.
Yeah.
That could have been a bit
I was just
embarrassing.
about to say, pretty embarrassing I couldn't do that. Sorry, it was across 2 screens. So yeah, we'll just be talking today just on the rising the trends that we're seeing really within the sector particularly. I know the sector's kind of always shied away from cloud. So it's kind of showing the trends that we are seeing within the nuclear partners we work with, what they're bringing in. So for example, Microsoft Teams. Tools that do aid communication, aid productivity, management, and of course security, and then how we can stay secure using those cloud technologies. And for people working from home, as I'm sure everyone's working from home in a minute, but just to go through a quick introduction into Yellow Bus, we are in our 20th anniversary, so it's our 20th birthday this year, which is good. We started on Birchwood Park, kind of for its nuclear heritage. So one of our core values you'll see in a second is security, and we've always provided those secure services and products to people within the industry, preparing them really for tenders and stuff like that, making sure the systems are set up to get work in. Along with that, we on Birchwood Park provided the infrastructure across the park, which was really good. And yeah, as you can see, our core services there, managed IT and proactive support, hosted cloud technologies, which is the main point of today, and connectivity. That brings us to today. Don't want to take too long in this introduction, but we're now also on Westlake Science Park. We've provided the infrastructure up there, working with Beck, so that's been really good. And as I mentioned, security is our kind of core value along with compliance. We're accredited 9001 and 27001. And so it just boasts I like to boast about it, to be honest, because it shows the quality of what we do, the procedures that we follow in terms of data, how we handle our data, and what everyone likes is SC cleared engineers as well. So we are treating people's data properly. So I'll just move onto the trends within the sector. So of course, the biggest trend is remote working, and it's the new normal, which is the buzzword everyone throws around. Everyone's throwing it on LinkedIn, and you're seeing it all the time. And to be honest with you, in the sector and the partners we've seen, it's no different, as you all probably know. Everyone's now looking at using things like Microsoft Teams. They're looking at things like Zoom, we're using today, WebEx, all sorts of different tools, SharePoint for collaboration, but as you can see there, the increase in Teams has been a massive 775% increase in Teams. And it's a great tool, you know, it lets everyone communicate and collaborate together. If no one hasn't used it yet, just let me know. I'm happy to give a demonstration or talk anyone through it. But it's great for, you've now gone from everyone in the office together, obviously everyone's now dispersed across different locations, and it's a fantastic way to keep everyone together, keep everyone communicating. And then, of course, there's a rise in security products. One of the biggest things we've seen trend-wise has been the Cyber Essentials accreditation. Now, I'm not sure if anyone's heard of that before, but it's basically a set of policies that you're putting together for your business to help and show basically that you are secure and that you are treating data properly. And now we've seen this as a big rise, as in a lot of companies are using that So then, because what you can do is you can then share those policies around with the team to ensure people are staying secure when they're working remotely, which we'll get onto in a second. Other great tools that people are using, another big trend has been Microsoft Project. And again, it allows people to project manage. It's a great tool for managing those projects and assigning them to different members of a team or of a department. And the biggest trend is using that because it integrates into Microsoft Teams, which not a lot of people do know. Other tools such as Basecamp, Asana, and even Trello just ensures these communications as the kind of project management tools that allow and sustain efficiency. So obviously you've not got the person next to you to put plans together. You can use these cloud tools, put these plans together and then distribute them across departments. Makes working a lot easier. Let's move on to cloud. So cloud services for nuclear going forward, because obviously I feel as though everyone's kind of been pushed into this remote working, everyone's been pushed into using these tools that I've mentioned, and kind of these trends are spiked as of that. But what does that mean moving forward? For us, we think it will reshape the way the industry looks at cloud. Previously, it's kind of shied away from it. It's always wanted to have the data local, and if everyone can see the data, or, you know, we've even worked with IT managers where they're like, well, if I can see it and I can touch it, I know it's there. But now with what's going on, people are now using cloud. You know, it's for me, it is going to reshape the way the industry looks at cloud services. And the kind of advantages of cloud is that it's scalable and flexible. Anyone who has made the jump or made the jump previously to, for example, Office 365 or a cloud server, will see how quickly it can be done, how quickly it can be distributed, but also how it's very scalable. So especially with the partners we've worked with, traditionally they'll get assigned a project, or they'll go for tender, get that work, and their workforce then has to be obviously increased. Now then, traditionally with the on-premise solutions, or traditional ways of looking at IT, would be a case of then speaking with your IT department, okay, how can we scale everything up? How can we now make sure that this workforce has got all the tools it needs to do its job? And that becomes, it's costly, and it spends a lot of time. You spend a lot of time then in project with your IT department on planning, make sure you get the right service, for example, you get the right solution in place. With cloud, you kind of take that time away at a more cost-effective rate. You can just scale up, and you know, you don't have to then look at, okay, do we need to increase the amount of service, for example, we've got on site to accommodate 20 more staff. You can just scale up that service. You don't have to worry about that. And same when you scale back down, once then workforce and that project are complete, and those associates that are working for you aren't now there, you're now left traditionally with redundant kit. And often the conversation you have with us is, well, what can we do with this now? Cloud, again, you just scale back down. So it could be the future for me. And then they're the four key areas that you want your technology to boost. So you want technology to boost your productivity. You want technology to enable you all to communicate better, work better on things, collaborate better on content, and of course, keep secure and keep it manageable. So
James, just got one more minute if we want to take questions, mate. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So just on security, I'll quickly fly through those. End user devices, working from home. So we've seen a massive trend in people bringing their own devices without encryption and antivirus and software on that they kind of should be having. And probably another big one, just as you'll see at the bottom there, people who have moved to Office 365, two big things: ensure that the data is hosted in the UK, the UK data center is brand new, and ensure it's backed up. 365 isn't backed up. So just make sure you've got a UK backup for that. And yeah, that's pretty much from me. If anyone wants to ask any questions, sorry for taking up so much time.
No, no, you're bang on time. You're bang on time.
And so
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much for that, James. Is there any questions? So same drill as before. Raise the hand button and Monica can unmute you. Got any questions there, Monica?
I'm just having a little look through. No, I don't think there's any questions at this stage.
Great. Okay. Right. Okay. So just coming to, before I wrap up, I know there's a bit of just general parish notices. Nicola Merriman from NSAN, are you on? I know you had a note on Accelerate Cheshire and Warrington funding for training opportunities there. Is Nicola on?
Hi Lauren, hello everybody. Yeah, just a couple of quick words, if possible, really. Not sure if people have seen the latest communications about the Accelerate Cheshire and Warrington. I believe Susan will email further information out to members following the meeting today. But for those of you that are not aware, Accelerate Cheshire and Warrington is an opportunity to access financial and skills development support to upskill and reskill your workforce. In terms of eligibility, there is no restriction on the size of your organisation. However, your employees either must live or work within the Cheshire and Warrington area. And under Accelerate scheme, you can access up to 40% contribution towards training courses. So as I said, I think Susan's going to send some further details, but if anybody needs any help or support with that, please do get in contact. Furthermore, NSAN has also been working since we've been on lockdown with our training provider network. And we've now pulled together a list of e-learning and virtual training interventions for the nuclear industry. So some of it is specific nuclear training, and others is sort of wider skills for nuclear. So I believe Susan's going to circulate that also after the meeting. But again, if anybody needs any help or support, please do get in contact. And that's it, Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicola. So before I do a bit of a, anyone else got any notices they'd like to raise? We've just got a minute. If there's anyone else that's got anything that they'd like to raise to the team. No, we're all good there, are we?
Yeah, all good.
Great, okay. So in terms of just closing, in terms of the summaries and the key messages to take away, certainly I've noted down, certainly from Richard Maguire's presentation on the supply chain strategy. We can see what projects are in flight there. Really, there's the call for readiness to ensure that we can respond to tenders as they come through. It's great to see that we're getting some real visibility of the opportunities, and I think you called it the mountain, the challenge mountain. That's a challenge of, there's a massive opportunity there, really, a mountain of opportunity, I think we should be calling it. It's great to see that, there's a multi-project procurement approach being taken with a centralised procurement portal being set up. And it is really good to see that the openness and the ability to communicate with Richard and the rest of the team in PPP. That's great to see. Obviously, taken from Diane's presentation, the importance that social impact will have in future opportunities, and making sure that it's contractualised to ensure those that promise are held to account. Love the analogy on the social impact being the vaccine rather than the paracetamol. That's great. Really clear way of thinking about it. And obviously, really important to remember that this is very much aligned with the SL social impact strategy. So making sure that you have a read of that, and obviously the links to the supporting information as well. So, and obviously the last piece being that the PPP social impact plan will be issued shortly. Then James has finished up. Yellow Boss is a great SME who's obviously grown with our sector, and it's great to see that they are covering both Warrington and West Cumbria. and there's some really useful tips there on how, you know, the new normal is going to have an ability to take this terrible circumstance of COVID-19 to actually use it as a positive to springboard, you know, technologies to those more reserved markets, if we say. So, you know, finally, I'd just like to say a big thank you to all the speakers. So Richard Maguire, Diane Richardson, and James Rooney, and also all the partners from PPP, KBR, Wood, Doosan, Morgan Sindall, and Sellafield Limited. So, as Monica said at the beginning, one big thank you very much to Monica. You've dragged us into the 21st century using Zoom. You're now our expert on this. So yeah, great. So there is going to be a session for virtual coffee afterwards. I believe we've got a couple of rooms set up. Monica, do you want to give a little bit of insight on this? Because I'm getting a bit lost here.
Yeah, no problem. So you've got the option to stay on this call, and what we can do is just go into 2 smaller groups for anyone who wants to stay for about 5 to 10 minutes, where you can just do some additional networking. So if you do want to stay on, the first room will have James Rooney and Richard Maguire in it, and the second room will have Diane Richardson and Lauren Jones in. So if you could put in the chat, if you do want to stay in network in either of those rooms, could you either indicate room 1 if you want to speak with James and Richard, or room 2 if you want to speak with Diane and Lauren, and then I'll move you into those respective rooms.
Great, that's perfect, Monica. Well, thank you very much for everyone's attendance. It's been a really good session, lots of information and obviously opportunity for people to connect. You know, really follow up on the speakers there. They've given their contact details for a reason. Let's make sure we're engaging and making sure we're following up these opportunities. So great, thank you very much.